Grief saved me.
Casualty of war. If he hadn't interfered, he might still be alive.
I've spent my whole life putting bad guys behind bars.
She was the heart of NCIS, the gothic scientist with pigtails, tattoos, and a brain that could solve the darkest of crimes. To millions of fans around the world, Pauley Perrette wasn't just playing Abby Ciuto. She was Abby, a quirky, caffeinated, unstoppable force who made forensic science cool, and who turned a supporting role into the very soul of the show. But behind the laughter, the hugs, and the giant cups of CF Pow, there was a secret. For years, the public believed Pauley left NCIS on her own terms, ready for a quieter life away from Hollywood. But the truth was far more explosive. Hidden allegations, fear on set, a brutal betrayal, and a settlement big enough to keep mouths shut. And when the details finally leaked, the world realized the gothic queen of television had been living through a nightmare no one could see. This is the untold story of Pauley Perrette. Pauley Perrette was born on March 27, 1969, in New Orleans, Louisiana, but she never really had a hometown. Her father worked in the railroad industry, which meant the family packed up and moved constantly. By the time Pauley reached her teenage years, she had lived in 14 different places. That constant uprooting could have broken her spirit, but instead, it gave her an unusual gift, the ability to adapt. She became an expert at reading people, blending in, and adjusting quickly to new environments. Alabama was the one place she ever called home, but the truth was she belonged everywhere and nowhere. Even as a child, Pauley was different. While other kids played with dolls or dreamed of being astronauts, she was fascinated by crime stories. She devoured books and TV shows about criminals and the science that caught them. At school, she'd talk about becoming an FBI agent, a criminologist, or even joining a rock band. And she meant it. She wasn't chasing fame. She was chasing answers. Answers to one haunting question. Why do people hurt each other without remorse? That question would follow her for the rest of her life. After high school, Pauley pursued criminal justice, earning degrees in sociology, psychology, and criminology. She later enrolled at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York, one of the most prestigious schools in the field. She seemed destined for a life in law enforcement, not Hollywood. But life had other plans. While living in Atlanta in the 1980s, she suffered a violent mugging, an attack that left deep emotional scars. Instead of burying the trauma, Pauley turned it into fuel. She doubled down on her studies, speaking out for victims and promising herself she'd never forget what it felt like to be one of them. Her college years were anything but glamorous. In New York, she bartended in underground clubs, passed out flyers on roller skates, cooked on dinner cruise boats, and rocked a mohawk with combat boots. She was living the wild nightlife of the city while studying human behavior by day. And then there were the tattoos. Her first came at age 15, a shocking act in the conservative Southern world she grew up in. Over time, she collected around 20 tattoos, each one a symbol of her independence and rebellion against the strict church upbringing that had once tried to confine her. She looked like the perfect Southern girl on the outside, blonde hair, polite manners, but inside, Pauley was already breaking the mold. In the early 1990s, Pauley arrived in Los Angeles with just $71 in her pocket. Survival, not stardom, was her goal. She crashed on friends' floors, walked dogs along Sunset Boulevard for $5 a day, and even worked voiceover gigs for call-in music services just to keep the lights on. One of those stray dogs, a pit bull she rescued, became her beloved companion Cece, a bond that would later play an unexpected role in her Hollywood battles. Ironically, Pauley never set out to be an actress. She stumbled into it by chance. One day, sitting in a coffee shop, she overheard someone talking about a casting call for the Drew Carey Show. Curious, she showed up and landed a small role. That one eavesdropped conversation became the start of her career. Soon, she picked up guest roles on Frasier, Murder One, and even appeared in Cameron Crowe's Almost Famous. She wasn't a household name yet, but she was building momentum. And then came the audition that would change her life forever. It was 2003. Pauley walked into the NCIS audition room wearing baggy jeans, sneakers, and a plain white t-shirt. Nothing about her screamed, "Gothic scientist." But the moment she stepped in, creator Don Belisario reportedly said, "That's her." What they saw wasn't just an actress. It was raw, unfiltered energy. Pauley's fast-talking warmth, her caffeinated personality, and her habit of hugging everyone in sight. They weren't scripted. That was just Pauley. When she slipped into Abby Ciuto's black pigtails, lab coat, and choker necklaces, something clicked. Abby wasn't just a character. She was a piece of Pauley herself, magnified and immortalized on screen. Fans loved her instantly. Abby became the quirky heartbeat of NCIS, balancing dark crimes with humor, compassion, and science. She wasn't just another TV lab tech. She was a cultural phenomenon. From there, NCIS exploded. Ratings climbed into the tens of millions. Abby's CAF POW cups turned into marketing gold. Bert the farting hippo became a cult icon. And in 2011, Guinness World Records named Pauley the most popular actress in American TV crime dramas. She had gone from broke bartender to the queen of primetime television. But behind the laughter and success, trouble was already brewing. By the mid-2000s, NCIS wasn't just a show, it was a juggernaut. At its peak, the series drew over 20 million viewers each week, dominating primetime and even dethroning American Idol. And right at the center of it all was Pauley Perrette's Abby Ciuto. Abby wasn't just beloved, she was revolutionary. She proved that intelligence could be cool, that science could be edgy, and that you didn't have to fit the mold to be the hero. Fans decorated their bedrooms with posters of her, cosplayed as her at conventions, and even lined up at 7-Elevens when the store chain launched an official CAF POW promotion that boosted energy drink sales nationwide. But Pauley wasn't just performing. She took Abby's job seriously. Behind the scenes, she studied DNA analysis, ballistics, and lab procedures with real forensic experts. She didn't just memorize jargon. She understood it. That authenticity made Abby feel real, and it made Pauley respected in a way few TV actors ever achieve. And yet, as the spotlight grew brighter, the shadows behind it deepened. For years, the NCIS set had been a family. Cast and crew laughed together, worked long hours, and celebrated ratings victories. But in October 2016, everything changed. Mark Harmon, the show's lead, had a habit of bringing his rescue pit bull, Dave, to set. Most days, the dog was fine. But that fall, disaster struck. Dave attacked a crew member, biting so viciously that the man required 15 stitches. Production halted for hours. Whispers of fear spread across the lot. Pauley was shaken. A lifelong animal lover, she adored dogs, but she also knew how dangerous pit bull attacks could be. She expected the network to ban Dave from set. Instead, they allowed him back. For Pauley, that was a breaking point. She demanded in writing that she would never be forced to share the stage with Harmon's dog again. Her season 15 contract contained an unprecedented clause. She and Harmon would no longer film scenes together. From that moment on, the cast was split. Scheduling became a nightmare. Entire episodes were restructured so Abby and Gibbs, once inseparable, never occupied the same room. By her final episode in 2018, Pauley and Harmon didn't even share a building. Editors had to stitch together footage to fake interaction that never happened. On screen, the chemistry still looked real. Behind the camera, it was a Cold War. For fans, Abby's farewell episode was heartbreaking. Over 15 million people tuned in, unaware of the storm raging backstage. Then, weeks later, Pauley broke her silence. At 6 a.m. one morning in June 2019, she tweeted, "I am terrified of Harmon. I have nightmares about him attacking me. I will never return to NCIS." The internet exploded. Headlines spread across the globe. Could it be true? Could the calm, fatherly Mark Harmon really be the villain in Abby's story? Harmon stayed silent. CBS stayed quiet. But Pauley's words had weight because she wasn't just talking. She had receipts. Leaked reports later revealed that she had filed 3 separate safety complaints with HR before her departure. She had even hired a private investigator to document safety violations on set. That evidence forced CBS into a private settlement, rumored to be between $5 and $9 million. This wasn't a diva leaving over salary disputes. This was a woman who said she felt unsafe in her own workplace, battling a network empire to be heard. And she won, but at the cost of her career. After her explosive exit, Pauley attempted a comeback with the sitcom Broke in 2020. The premiere drew over 7 million viewers, but the numbers quickly collapsed. Critics called the show directionless, and by the end of its short 13-episode run, less than half the audience remained. 2 months later, Pauley sent out one final message: "I'm free," in bright rainbow colors. It wasn't just a tweet, it was a farewell. After 25 years, over 350 episodes of NCIS, and a Guinness World Record as the most popular actress in crime dramas, Pauley Perrette was done with Hollywood forever. Networks begged her to reconsider. Law and Order, SVU, and The Good Doctor offered lucrative guest spots, roles that could have earned her hundreds of thousands of dollars. She turned them all down. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about peace. In September 2021, Pauley woke up and knew something was wrong. The entire right side of her body was numb. She couldn't feel her own cheek, couldn't sense the laptop resting on her legs. Within minutes, she was in an emergency room. Doctors confirmed the nightmare. At just 53 years old, she was suffering a massive ischemic stroke. For 36 hours, she lost her voice completely. At one point, doctors doubted she would live past 5 p.m. And yet, she survived. Not just because of the doctors, but because of Rosie, her rescue dog. Rosie wouldn't stop pawing at her, alerting her to the danger and buying her precious time. Without Rosie, Pauley admitted, she might not have lived to tell the story. It was a cruel irony, and a beautiful one. The woman who had spent her life rescuing animals was, in the end, saved by one. The stroke changed Pauley. It stripped away whatever illusions remained about fame, about television, about the life she had once lived under blinding studio lights. What mattered now was breath, heartbeat, stillness. She withdrew even further from Hollywood and began seeking peace in places most celebrities would never think to go. Twice a year, she traveled quietly to a Benedictine monastery tucked in the cliffs of Big Sur, overlooking the restless Pacific. There were no red carpets here, no paparazzi, no reminders of the scandals that had nearly broken her. Instead, there was silence, hours of it. The monks welcomed her not as a star, but as a seeker. They did not ask for autographs or photos. They asked only for presence, for humility, for listening. And in that silence, Pauley found a new kind of faith. It wasn't the fire and brimstone religion of her southern childhood, with strict rules and judgment. It was something gentler, conversations with God that felt more like whispers from a friend. Her daily prayer became her anchor. Thank you for everything. Forgive me for everything. It was simple, but it held within it both gratitude and surrender. She thanked life for the chances she had been given, and she asked for forgiveness. Not just from God, but from herself, for the years she had carried guilt, trauma, and pain. Sometimes, during retreats, she spoke about hearing guidance in the quiet. Not booming voices, not dramatic visions. Just single words that would float into her heart. Trust, wait. Not now. These moments gave her strength to keep moving forward. The monastery also helped her process the pain of her past. The violent mugging in Atlanta, the terrifying assault in 2015 that left her shaken, the bitter battles with CBS. Surrounded by ancient stone walls and the sound of waves, she finally allowed herself to let go. For Pauley, faith was no longer about rituals. It was about healing. It was about sitting in stillness until the noise faded, about finding grace in a world that had tried so many times to break her. And for the first time in decades, she felt whole again. It wasn't about religion in the traditional sense. It was about connection. About finding forgiveness not just from God, but from herself. The silence of the monastery gave her what Hollywood never could: clarity. Even after leaving the spotlight, Pauley never stopped giving. She quietly paid for the funeral of a young cancer patient she had met through the Make-A-Wish Foundation. She became an executive producer on Studio One Forever, a documentary about America's first gay disco, preserving LGBTQ history for a new generation. And when Playboy twice offered her nearly $1 million to pose, she turned them down flat. Fame, she believed, should never come at the cost of self-respect. Her choices weren't always loud. Often, they were private acts of kindness no one ever knew about. But they were powerful. In 2023, a leaked probate filing revealed Pauley Perrette's final act of defiance against Hollywood's expectations. Her estate, valued at over $22 million, would not go to family or friends. Every cent would be divided between no-kill animal shelters and the Innocence Project, which helps free the wrongfully convicted. 60% to animals, 40% to justice. Her ashes, she requested, would be scattered in 2 places, at a dog park and at the rescue center where she had adopted her first beloved companion. To some, it seemed unusual. To Pauley, it was perfect. She wanted her final resting places to be filled with joy, dogs playing, tails wagging, life moving forward. She didn't want marble statues or Hollywood memorials. She wanted laughter, muddy paw prints, and hope. In the end, Pauley Perrette wasn't just the quirky goth scientist of TV lore. She was a survivor, a fighter, and above all, a protector. A woman who walked away from millions, from fame, and from the Hollywood machine itself. Not because she had failed, but because she had succeeded in finding something more valuable: peace. Her story resonated with people far beyond television. For victims of workplace abuse, she became a voice reminding them that silence doesn't have to be permanent. For stroke survivors, she became proof that even when your body betrays you, resilience can carry you further than medicine alone. For animal lovers, she became a guardian angel whose entire fortune was pledged to creatures that could never repay her. And for fans of NCIS, Abby Ciuto lives on as one of the most beloved characters in television history. A reminder that intelligence, kindness, and eccentricity can be heroic, even more than brute strength. Even today, thousands of fans still write about how Abby inspired them to pursue careers in science, forensic labs, or law enforcement. Some became criminologists, others forensic pathologists, all carrying a little piece of the inspiration Pauley once gave them on screen. She may have left Hollywood, but her influence is still shaping futures in the real world. She gave everything she had to the voiceless, victims, the innocent, the forgotten, and the animals no one else would save. And that is how she chose to be remembered. Not as a celebrity, not as a scandal, but as a woman who stood up, walked away, and lived her truth even when the cost was everything. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most powerful role she ever played. Pauley Perrette's story is more than a Hollywood tale. It's about resilience, about knowing when to fight and when to walk away. She showed the world that true strength isn't about fame or fortune. It's about standing firm in your values, even when it costs you everything. She left the world of bright lights for the quiet company of her dogs, her prayers, and her peace. And maybe that's the greatest ending of all. Not a fall from grace, but a rise into freedom.